Hey, it's Kyle here, and I'm continuing my series this year where I talk about some of my favorite books and some of my favorite literary genres. And today I'll be talking about my 5 favorite books in the dystopian genre. A lot of these books I think you could also easily classify as science fiction, so I would encourage you to check out my science fiction list, which I've already published. Because one thing I did decide was I was only going to do one book per genre list. So there's some books that could easily qualify as dystopian, but I decided I felt like they worked a little bit better in the sci-fi genre, so I put them in that list. So if there's any books that you're surprised that didn't make my dystopian list, you might want to check my sci-fi list because they might have made that list instead. So with that explanation out of the way, I'll go ahead and delve in. Number 5, The Postman by David Brin. Of course, a lot of people are familiar with the movie version, starring Kevin Costner, which I know a lot of people hate that movie. Actually, I kind of enjoyed the movie. It's not my favorite, but I liked it. But the book is really, really good. So don't let, if you hated the movie, scare that away from you from reading the book. The concept is basically the same, but I think the execution is definitely a lot better in the book. The characters are more well-rounded and better developed. The storyline moves a lot quicker. I think one of my complaints about the movie is a very slow movie. It felt like it could have been edited down a lot. A lot of that slowness is lost in the book. The basic concept, though, is basically society has collapsed in America because of a civil war, and it's kind of the country's almost been governed in a lot of smaller regions almost by like warlords and stuff like that. And that's the situation our main characters find themselves in this book. And basically, one of the survivors basically begins to adopt the identity of a postman and basically claims the United States government is reforming and they're attempting to reestablish postal service across the entire country. And this begins the series of events that unfolds that sets the conflict for basically people fighting for a new hope and a new society. So The Postman is a really very interesting and great dystopian novel. I strongly encourage you to check it out if you've never read it. Number 4, Divergent by Veronica Roth. Of course, again, another book that probably a lot of people have seen the movie for. Hopefully a lot of people have read this book. I know probably after the Hunger Games series, the Divergent series is probably the best known YA dystopian series. It's been very popular in recent years. Really enjoy Veronica Roth as an author. One of her other books that's came out since this, Carve the Mark, I really loved a lot. It was my favorite fiction book that I read last year. So I'm a big fan of Veronica Roth. Divergent is an awesome start to a great series. I will say I felt like one of the biggest differences between the Divergent series and the Hunger Games series is the Hunger Games series I felt was stronger throughout all 3 books, where the Divergent series had some weaker moments, although I really loved the way this series ended. But Divergent was a great start to this series. Really love this book. So if you've never read it before, maybe you have a feeling like I'm not really into YA. You owe yourself. Don't let the YA tag prevent you from reading it. Divergent is a great book, so I strongly encourage you to read it. Number 3, and I think this is of all the books in this genre list, is the one I read the longest ago, Alas Babylon. I believe I read this when I was a teenager. This book was actually published during the Cold War, during the height of the fear of nuclear war. And that is really the basic concept behind the book. What would have happened if nuclear war had broke out between the United States and the Soviet Union? And this book focuses on a small town in Florida that basically nuclear war happens. The residents of this small town survive, but now they're completely cut off from the rest of the world. They have no idea who else survived, if the United States still even exists anymore, if there's any society anywhere, or if they're completely on their own. It's basically the people that had been living in a modern world now suddenly have to try to survive without all the modern conveniences they came to rely on, like electricity, for example. It's a very interesting look into how citizens of a modern society can kind of rally together and attempt to survive when they're basically thrown back to the Dark Ages, for a lack of a better term. So, Last Babylon, a lot of people probably have not read this book since it is an older book, but if you're really into dystopian books, I'd really encourage you to check out Last Babylon because it is a very, very great example of this genre. Number 2, this is really not a book. It's more graphic novels or comics, however you want to categorize it. But to me, it definitely falls in that dystopian genre, and that is The Walking Dead. So to illustrate this, I've shown off my Compendium 1. Of course, I'm sure most people are very familiar with the TV show. I'll admit, I actually watched the TV show before I ever had read any of The Walking Dead. I typically was not really into the zombie genre, but I happen to live in the Atlanta area, so when they first started doing TV trailers for the series, I saw this and thought, wow, this show's set in Atlanta, and there's really not a whole lot of stuff set in Atlanta, and I thought, well, I'm just going to watch it just to see that part of it. And I knew they filmed it around here too, I'd heard that, so I'm just going to see if I recognize anything. I'm sure I'm not going to enjoy it, I'll just watch the first episode and that's it. After the first episode, I was absolutely hooked. And it got me very interested in actually reading the series. But I waited 2 or 3 seasons in before I finally got around to finally getting this compendium, and that's how I've been reading them. Is that they release a new compendium, I get that. So I think they've released 3. I don't think they've released the 4th one yet. But I've read the first 3 compendiums. Really love this. So if you're a fan of the show and you've never read the graphic novels, the comics, however you want to categorize them, strongly encourage you to check them out. It's not a huge spoiler for the TV series because they follow the same basic concept, but there is differences. So just because you read this and something happened doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen in the TV series. Or let's say you're reading the first issues of this, but you've already seen the TV series, and you're like, I don't know everything that's happened. It's different enough that you still get surprises. There's different characters in both that don't appear in the other. Different events, different situations. They don't necessarily happen in the same order. Sometimes the same events happens, but like in the graphic novels, one character dies, but the TV series, they chose a different character to die in that situation. So I strongly encourage you to check that out. So The Walking Dead by Robert Kirkman is the main person behind that. If I didn't say that, can't remember if I did or not. And the number 1 book in the dystopian genre, according to me, my favorite, is The Hunger Games, Suzanne Collins. This book deserves a ton of credit for basically dramatically increasing the popularity of dystopian books, specifically YA dystopian. YA dystopian storylines in general got a big boost out of the popularity of Hunger Games. Like a lot of book publishers, TV shows, movies looked at this and go, wow, there is people clearly like dystopian, let's do more of this. Which is all good by me because I absolutely love dystopian novels. I think a huge reason why is because of my interest in politics and government. I was actually a government major in college, and I'm always fascinated to see how these societies are set up in a dystopian era. You know, the different ways you can go around that. So that's an aspect of it that I always enjoy. And The Hunger Games definitely does that, where they have a very interesting society and government that came about. I'm not going to go into the plot because everybody is probably well aware of what the Hunger Games plot is. It's one of the most popular book series in recent years, and definitely one of the more popular movie series of of recent years. And also, I have a small connection to the Hunger Games series. I was an extra in Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. Do not bother trying to freeze frame that movie to try to find me because you will not see my face.